So, this morning we're talking about dealing with conditions. Is there anybody who lacks a condition?
Conditioner.
Okay, so we're all in the same boat together. Anybody not have a shadow? This is a good thing. I'm told that the only people that don't have shadows are not of this earth, so just wanted to know who was in my audience here. I did some research because we're a science of mind center, and so I gravitate back to science. And I'm learning more about science as a minister than I ever thought I would, which is kind of cool. A shadow, interestingly enough, a shadow is a dark area where light from a light source is blocked. So that instantly takes me to turn to the light. So if I'm dealing with conditions, if I'm dealing with a shadow side, and I turn to the light, everything is all fixed, right? That would be too easy. Interestingly enough, a shadow is more than blocked light. It requires blocked light and reflected light to create a shadow. And the reflected light, I did not know. I knew it was a blocked, because, we can do those hand puppet things, and you have light coming, and it looks like a bunny rabbit over here, but if I look back at my hands, it's clearly not a bunny rabbit. But the way that happens is there's light on both sides. There's light being blocked and light reflecting back. So that takes me to, it's all light. And so if I'm blocking light and I'm failing to see the reflected light, I'm in the dark. And that puts me in the shadow piece. Now, interestingly enough, if you've ever watched, there's a ton of YouTube videos with kids experiencing their shadow for the first time. They're terrified. It's really, and it's funny to watch them, and the parents are cracking up in the background. But when I identify with that little kid, that for the first time they see this thing following them everywhere they go. There's this thing that is apparently attached to them. They don't know what it is. They don't know why it's there. And no matter how much they run or where they go, it keeps following them. And they're like, literally, these little kids are like, ah! And that's kind of like me with my shadow side. It's like everywhere I go, it shows up. The challenge is addressing the shadow side. Because most of the time, and again, maybe it's just me, I don't want to deal with the shadow side. I just want to make it go away. And so I try to tell myself things that will change my shadow. But I never actually look at my shadow. Carl Jung described the shadow as an unconscious aspect of the personality which the conscious ego does not identify in itself. And so what that tells me is that that's the part of my human psyche that somehow manages to divorce myself from shadow, that it's not mine. I'm not sure what it's reflecting. I'm not sure where it came from. My parents are the first source. You know, all the things that show up in my life are the shadow side. That's how I was raised. They did it to me. I'll say we, because I don't think I'm alone in this. We see the shadow stuff, but then we assign blame to how it got there. And the truth of the matter is, all it is blocked light. Now, in our philosophy, we refer to the divine as light. So if my shadow is blocked light and reflected light, could it be that it's the greatest source of information from the divine about my human path that educates me about where I might want to put my focus? That rather than something to run from, rather than something to eliminate, what if I saw it as the divine invitation to explore it? To be with it, to study it, to embrace it, to stop judging it, to stop avoiding it. Then what would I see in my life? Over the past week, I've seen a whole lot of thoughts that I don't even know I had just doing this talk. Because part of what happens as preparing these talks, I haven't found a way to prepare the talk without it talking to me. And so whatever I'm talking about is working me all week. And so I noticed that while I tell myself I'm really comfortable living in the mystery, my wife is off at Sister Spirit this weekend, having a glorious time, no doubt. And things wove together in a way that opened the door for her to step into an experience of herself that was unplanned as a presenter at Sister Spirit. And so that's all amazing stuff. And Friday night, I'm sitting on the couch doing some studying, and all of a sudden I just burst into tears. And I'm like, what is this about? And when I just sat with it, what came up was, I'm thrilled for her, and what if she never comes back? And interestingly enough, all of the human reasons I would have thought of that were the issue weren't the issue. What came up, and it feels a little silly from my man brain, but every woman I've told it to really thinks it's amazing, so I'm just going to be vulnerable. I couldn't imagine never smelling her hair again. And that was such a deep place of connection that I wasn't even aware of. You know, all the relationship stuff and the conversations and hanging out and growing together and all the obvious things weren't the issue. The issue was this really tender, vulnerable spot that I had been unwilling to embrace. That the most precious thing are those times when we're just snuggled up and she fits right here and I lean over and the smell of her hair penetrates the very core of my being. And I just let myself have the moment. I just let myself sob. because I hadn't imagined my life without her in it since 2004, when the urge to ask her to marry me showed up. And I started wondering, what else am I not looking at? What else is so tender and so deep that I'm afraid to touch it? Because I don't know what will happen if I do. The bank account, mowing the grass, all that's easy stuff. It's easy. It's easy to, God, I got this much homework, and let me look at my calendar. That's not going to fit. God, that's easy. And yet I realized that that's where I spend a lot of my time trying to change that shadow work. Stop complaining, Rafe. It's your calendar, you put the stuff in there. That's the dance with my shadow that I've been doing. And that stuff is easy. If I'm being really honest, I think sometimes I hang out there so I don't have to go deeper. Maybe it's just me. It's possible. The other thing that Jung says about the shadow, he calls it the unknown dark side of the personality. Personality goes back to the Latin root of persona. Persona goes back to the Greek root, mask, which I was like, I don't want to talk about that. Is there another word? Because what are the masks that we wear? So I researched mask. In the Greek tragedies, they didn't have a whole lot of people in the show. And so, the same people were playing multiple roles. And the way they did that is they go off stage, put on a new mask, come back out and be a whole different persona. And I really didn't want to look at that. Like, oh, no. Because how often do we do that? When I'm at home, woof, the husband mask. When Deborah leaves, the man mask. When I'm here, the minister mask. We had a little gathering on Friday to thank Patty Weber for taking the time and the care to help Mountainside walk through a decision process. Now this is really easy because while there's a lot of people here, there's not a ton of interaction. So my introvert side is real good with this. A lot of people think introverts are really shy. You'd be surprised how many ministers are really, really introverted. Okay? So I agonized all day Friday and laughed at my shadows. I mean, there was a parade of shadows dancing by, all disguised as potential reasons and ways to get out of going on Friday. Because I'm really uncomfortable in those social settings. One-on-one, I'm great. I'm great. 2-on-1, I'm good. When it gets 3 or beyond, it's really challenging for me. It's not that I don't enjoy people, I do. But energetically, Suddenly there's too much going on. My perfect birthday party is Facebook. It's fabulous. I literally get hundreds of people wishing me a happy birthday, and none of them are at my house. I love it. The first time I had a Facebook birthday party, I was like, this is the deal. But I can't do life on Facebook. I mean, I guess I could. Some people maybe are. I don't know. Maybe they never come out of their house. I don't know. That's none of my business. What is my business is recognizing my dance with conditions, my dance with shadows. Now, it would have been really easy to dismiss that parade of shadows behind the condition of, I'm an introvert. So I don't really have to go. I'm a choice. I could choose to stay home. And people might have opinions, but that's their opinion. That's none of my business. See, I tried that dance. Okay? I tried that. And ultimately, am I willing to put down the mask of introvert and go? And experience more light than uncomfortable experience. That's where the conversation finally got to. It's like, if my shadow is blocked light, if I turn to the light, well, the only thing there is go. Go. Open to a deeper experience. Because if I am light, see, we talk about all that the divine is, I am. Okay. Love Mary Ellen's prayer this morning. I am that. Okay. And that's true. But am I willing to be that? See, there's a huge chasm between knowing and being. The bridge doesn't exist until I move. If I'm being really honest, I stand over here and I see over there and I pray for the bridge to be built. And I wait. And I wait. I hadn't thought about this, but it's there, so I'm going to share it. When I was early in recovery, somebody in a meeting used the phrase, I'm waiting on God. And I'm pretty sure it was my addiction that latched onto that phrase as a really cool thing. And my sponsor, have you got a job yet? Waiting on God. And after about 6 months of this dance, she said, and I quote, you know, you're waiting on God a lot. So how about next time you're hungry, you lock yourself in a closet and see how long it takes God to shove a hot dog through the keyhole. Point made. But how often do we do that? I'm praying and I'm waiting on God. Because in those moments, somehow I have forgotten our teachings and I've put God out here. I have forgotten that God's right here. Right there, right there, right there, right there. See, God's not out here somewhere. Doesn't have a delivery truck. Doesn't have a calendar. Doesn't schedule deliveries. I mean, and when I think about it in those terms, it's like, oh wow, that really is what I'm doing. It's like, I'm praying, I'm imagining, okay, Rafe wants da-da-da-da-da-da, and that can be delivered on this time, but wait, no, Tommy's got this, so I need to put that there, so I'll bump Rafe to here. You know, that's not how the divine works. It's not a vending machine. I don't pop in a prayer and pull out an answer. Thomas Troward, who influenced about anywhere from 25 to 50%, depending on who you ask and which Ernest Holmes writing you read, it changes. But Thomas Troward said that we be, then we do, then we have. And how many of us are praying backwards? We're praying to have something, then we'll do something, so we become something. Right? I'm not alone. That's the challenge of conditions. If my ankle hurts, and I pray for my ankle to not hurt, am I not praying simply for a different condition? I didn't like that either when it came to my mind. It's like, oh man, I'm still in condition. Ernest Holmes says that we are to turn from conditions, not to select a different one, but to turn from condition. So when I relate that back to this dance with the shadows here, I turn from the condition, I'm turning to the light. So in our spiritual mind treatment, which for those that are unfamiliar with science of mind, all that is a specific form of prayer. And it's based on the scientific method so that it is repeatable and provable. The first step is a recognition of truth. It's recognizing the divine, the infinite, whether we call it God, Buddha, Allah, Spirit. Doesn't matter, because we can't really hold it in one name. So whatever name relates for you, use that name. But here's where we have to be really clear. We have to be really clear what it is. That if it is the infinite, if it is the all in all, if it is all good, ever present, having no beginning, having no end, then little things start changing. From anything's possible in the mind of God to everything is possible in the mind of God. It's a subtle difference, but anything isn't really committed. Everything is committed. Anything has numbers. Everything doesn't. Am I willing to see the infinite as everything? That's a lot to wrap our minds around. We're trying to understand and articulate the finite, the infinite, with finite language. So I would invite us all to just kind of get to a place of acceptance that we can talk about it, and we need to, but none of our words are ever going to be fully encompassing of what it is. So we go to a feeling place. What words take you to a feeling, to a knowing, to a sensing of what it is and the infinite power that it is? Use those words in the first step of your prayer. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. There's an old native story in the Cherokee tradition about the wolf, actually it's a coyote, who imitates other animals, and why the coyote stopped imitating. And the short version of it is, the coyote encounters a woodpecker, and the woodpecker has really red head. And so the coyote sees that as fire on its head. And so it decides that the woodpecker is a pretty amazing animal and is able to do things it's not, and decides that it's able to do those things because it has fire on its head. So the coyote goes out and gets a bundle of sticks and twigs, puts it on his head, lights its head on fire, thinking that it can do everything the woodpecker does now. And it's great for the first 30 seconds until his hair starts burning. And so off to the river he runs, and he dives in, and he's sore for quite a while after that. And when we learn that imitating people hurts, may not hurt right away, but it hurts because we've abandoned us. I can't be like Mary Ellen. I'm not going to pray like Mary Ellen. Sue's not going to pray like me. Doug is going to be different than everybody else, because that's how we're supposed to be. Yet, we are the same in God. So we're recognizing what the divine is. We're recognizing that we are that in form. We're an individualized representation, not a representation. Representation is a facsimile. We are not facsimiles, folks. We are the thing itself presented again and again and again and again and again. And so that's the second step, to know that you are that in form. Not some of it, not a part of it, not growing into it, but all that it is you. All of God is in me. I am by no means all of God, but all of it is right here. Again, when we really let that in and feel it, that's mind-blowing. At least it is for me. So if I get those first two steps and I really let them sink in, the third step is called realization. So if I recognize what it is, and I recognize that it's right here, I realize that all that it is me. Holy cow. Then what do I need to ask for? Nothing. Because it's all right here. It gives me the freedom to stop focusing on conditions. It takes me out of looking at stuff out here and standing squarely in the truth of my being, which automatically changes my doing. Thoughts, feelings, urges, actions. Okay? That's how things are created. We have a thought. Our thoughts create our feelings create our urges create our actions. So if I realize the truth of my being, necessarily that will change my thoughts. There is no way around it. When I realize that everything that holds this cosmos together, the intelligence, the abundance, the power of all of that is right here. All I have to do is own it. I don't have to beg for it. I don't have to bargain for it. I don't have to hunt for it. I just have to say yes. Yes. The rest takes care of itself. Now, I don't know about you, but when I get to that place, the next step in treatment can't not happen, which is gratitude. When I stand in the truth of my being, I feel nothing but gratitude. So that just naturally comes. There's 5 steps in treatment. There's one step where we actually do something. It's the last step. And all we do is let go. So if you're working really hard in your prayer work, I invite you to explore those shadows. Because you might be praying in the shadow instead of in the light. Because if we're praying in the light, there is no shadow. There's one way that there is no shadow. If an object is completely surrounded by the exact same frequency of light, from all angles, all direction, there is no shadow. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty freaking exciting. See, because that teaches me that all I have to do is embrace the light. And where it gets challenging, and this is your call to action for the week, is it's not just about seeing me as the light, it's about seeing you in the light. What would it be like for ourselves as individuals and for our planet if we spent every waking moment experiencing this world exactly as the divine does? Nothing but love, nothing but adoration, not one shred of judgment, because that's what lives in us. That's what's available to us. We know the truth of our being. We know the truth of ultimate being. That's us. So we realize that. We're grateful for it. And we let everything else go. Let's take this in prayer. Feeling the breath move my lungs, I recognize that is the breath of the one breathing me. Feeling my body, I recognize that it is the divine that created this vehicle for itself. This one source, infinite, uncountable, unmeasurable, having no beginning, it has always existed. It exists now, and it exists into eternity, into infinity. It is that essence that has no circumference. So its very center must be everywhere. That is what birthed me, represented me as an idea in its own mind. So all that it is me. And what is true of me is true of all life. Because we're all made from the same source. Each and every one of us, a perfect, amazing, idea created first in the mind of Source itself, and then brought into form as a representation of itself. And so all life is it presenting itself again and again and again. And when I know that, I know that there's only one thing here. So all life is holy. Realizing that it is all there is. All I encounter, all I hear, all I see, all I taste, touch, and feel is the divine, is perfect spirit. All condition goes away. I don't have to change a thing. I simply say yes to seeing, to being, to knowing the truth of me and the truth of you. The truth of every politician, the truth of every criminal, the truth of every expression, of every form of weather. That as I realize truth at a deeper and deeper level, there's less and less to think about changing. And so in this moment I say yes. Yes to walking in this truth, to living in this truth, to returning again and again to this point where I know from the very center of my being out that there truly is only one thing happening here. And that's love. That's light. That's life, peace, power, and presence. And we are it. And so is everyone else. And as I speak those words, I feel the gratitude move within me, welling up inside. Holy wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you is the only word that even makes sense in this moment. And so I let go. And I step into the realization, into the demonstration, the manifestation of this truth as my life. And I simply let it be. And I invite you to join me as we anchor this together by saying, and so it is.